Welcome everyone, my name is Jordan Farmer. This is the Uncommon Ground YouTube channel where we are indoctrinating the masses, and today I'm going to be talking about how in moments of crises, opportunistic politicians will pass legislation that in other moments people would not tolerate, but because of that particular trigger, people are scared or fearful, panicked, or distracted, and they sneak things in. Why they would want to do this, it's typically career politicians who do this. As the power of government is expanded, their ability to sell that power and influence to the highest bidder allows career politicians to enrich themselves and their family and the people around them as much as possible. So there's an automatic tie to career politicians and increasing government power. Every entity in human life is self-perpetuating. We want to grow, we want to at a bare minimum survive and ideally grow and thrive. So anything is going to grow, and you have to understand that sometimes you'll have to trim things back and pull things back in, reduce government power. We saw after 9/11 the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act is a uniquely Orwellian document and law because, first off, it's named the Patriot Act. So if you're against the Patriot Act or you voted against the Patriot Act, well, are you not a patriot? Do you hate your country? Why won't you vote for the Patriot Act? And at the same time, extra Orwellian is that it's the least patriotic bill that's come through the Congress in decades. It has opened up an apparatus and a whole set of government agencies and funding to create mass data collection and mass surveillance to be used by law enforcement and investigation agencies, FBI and others, intelligence agencies as well, to be able to legally spy on us. It opened up legal surveillance of all American citizens by our government in response to a terrorist attack. And Jonathan Snowden has shown, or has testified at least, to the reality that the day that 9/11 happened, the Pentagon officials were scared for themselves and bailed instead of mobilizing in order to try to counter this response and end it. Obviously, if a building is going to come down or they're trying to commit a terrorist attack and you have to bring down a plane, you do it as carefully as you can, but you bring that frickin' thing down if you have to. They were cowards and they did not do that. And in the years since the Patriot Act, government officials have admitted in hearings and under oath that the Patriot Act has not prevented, or the provisions within the Patriot Act that increase this surveillance have not actually helped prevent any crimes. They had other mechanisms, previous tools that they had in order to prevent those other occurrences. They would not have needed it. It did not in and of itself go that extra step. But it hasn't been rolled back. That the success or failure of that particular policy, as with many of our policies, was not measured. And what gets measured gets accomplished. Then what doesn't get measured gets forgotten and ignored. Any policy that gets passed has to have some sort of metric for success. And we need to track it and measure it and see if it works. And if it doesn't, we roll it back, try something else, or admit that we can't get the job done. One or the other. Letting these things just go and hang is just a nonsensical strategy. But when we're distracted, when we're scared, when we're panicked, when we're overwhelmed by all of the news and all of the policies to learn and everything that goes on in politics, and we just can't know all of it, they get away with a lot. So, taking that full circle to right now, on the 6th of January 2021, we had a siege by a bunch of losers. Not losers in the sense that some people equate being poor with being a loser for some reason. That's not what I mean. Losers sieged the Capitol building, forced their way in, and they were Trump supporters, mainly anarchists, and they talked about that the lack of money coming through the stimulus definitely influenced their choices. The lack of Congress dealing with the problems of society was part of the motivation here. But anyways, the siege that happened was deplorable, and it shouldn't have happened. They should go to jail for what they did. They should be prosecuted for those laws. They did do harm, and it is a moral travesty. It is a shame, and it shows a tremendous. It's a signal of the weakness of our country and the fragility of our institutions in its existence. The fact that it happened is evidence of those things. This crisis is being used by opportunistic actors to change a lot of things. First off, Trump is being blamed for the siege on the Capitol. He called for a march on the Capitol in his speech, and he said specifically, it's about 12, 13 minutes into the speech, he said specifically, we're going to go and peacefully let our voices be heard, cheer on the senators who are fighting for us and are being strong, and not cheer on the senators who are being weak. We need to be strong and fight for what we believe in. We are going to go do this march towards the Capitol, to the Capitol. He specifically said, peacefully let your voices be heard. Under the legal standard, that is not incitement of violence. And yet, that incitement of violence, because Trump is this dictator and because the left-leaning narrative feeds constantly into the Trump's dictator, Trump's a dictator, Trump's a dictator. The automatic read is that this was a attempted coup, even though Trump has been using strong rhetoric, but using legal processes to try to fight things out and been talking about the things that he believes to be true. He's allowed to be wrong. He's allowed to, and he's not wrong on everything. When you have, like, there is cause for concern, not to the extent that he was pushing it, but there is cause for concern for the security of that election. People had concerns for the security of the 2016 election. They claim Trump is an incompetent, but they think somehow now the voting system is rock solid and secure, because that makes sense. Also, when you have we have lots and lots of issues with low vote security. It's just a fact. The chain of custody from a person being there, being designated with their vote and their ability to make their vote, and they're casting their ballot, that ballot then getting to the processing machine, getting processed and counted and tallied, that's a whole chain of custody. And that all needs security, it needs vetting, it needs identification, it needs professionals like government agencies, it shouldn't be volunteers, it should be government officials in charge of that are liable for that will get fired and lose their jobs if they mess it up. When you don't have that kind of security to begin with, you don't have mandatory ID laws, which isn't racist. Like, you're racist to think that minorities can't get access to IDs and therefore would be deterred by such security laws because you believe that they are somehow less than and cannot get those IDs themselves, which is racist. Beyond that chain of custody gets opened up when you have mail-in ballots and mail-in voting. There's a lot of trust involved in the process working properly. When you have, because of a pandemic, tens of millions of ballots that were not requested, not asked for, and are just being sent out because of who's on the rolls, whether they're current, whether that person is intending to vote or not, it gets sent out. They get filled out and is brought back to these facilities and then processed and counted. Between them getting sent and them coming back, particularly if they're people who don't vote very often or who are unlikely to vote or who may have had some sort of an issue, those ballots are definitely in danger of manipulation, in danger of intervention. And the thing is, that kind of fraud is not traceable. Once it's done, and there's no evidence. The absence of certain ballots never making it through that system, and certain ballots being filled out, and there being no accountability to the chain of custody, no tracking whatsoever, no evidence, And the people that don't vote typically in elections are unlikely to go check this, and I don't even know how you can go verify and check whether or not your vote was counted in a certain thing, but I'm sure there is. I'm just saying most people wouldn't. That opens up opportunities for fraud in and of itself. And then beyond that, you had video evidence of people sneaking in cases of extra ballots. You had, at least that's what it looked like, but you also had lots and lots of other witness testimony, which is not concrete evidence in and of itself, but it is evidence of a certain sort. And a lot of people talk about Trump having this terrible record. First off, he did win some cases. Second off, he issued as many lawsuits as he could as a tactic in and of itself. So to say he only got a couple of victories out of however many is to miss the point of filing lawsuits. You take every avenue you can. You chase down all the angles you can. Some of the courts wouldn't hear some of the cases. The Supreme Court wouldn't hear some of the issues. And Congress would not stop to hear out if there were any improprieties. That doesn't mean we don't move on, but there is one little last bit of evidence there that I need to bring up that is relevant to this. There was a report that Dominion voting systems are vulnerable to manipulation in the corrections process after errors are triggered. That was one report. It has not been adjudicated. There's a lot of things left on the table unaddressed. Putting that to the side, the day after the siege happened, Trump himself said, we're going to have a peaceful transition of power. There will be a new administration on January 20th, and we are moving forward on peacefully. So, he did not call for, he had good grounds to say what he said. He did not incite violence. He is now moving on. And he's prosecuting the people that, a lot of people are missing this. He's prosecuting and supporting the prosecutions, massive, thorough prosecutions of the people that did that. He's not letting them get away with it. He's not treating them with kid gloves. He's chasing them down with law enforcement. Moving on. The media, not the media, big tech, and Nancy Pelosi with the impeachment are tying Trump to that incitement of violence and ignoring everything else that I just said and opportunistically moving forward to try to take tremendous action while the majority of people probably support that action based off of their perceptions of what happened. But there will be tremendous consequences, and honestly, we only are seeing the beginning of the reverberations of what happened on January 6th. Never let a crisis go to waste. They can get Trump off of all the platforms, get all of his supporters and everyone around his movement cut out of the system. A lot of his views are now going to be completely taboo and never get brought up again, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing in part. I could tell that this was coming. Not really. I mean, I could tell this was coming because it's been coming for a long time. We've had censorship from tech for a while, but the loss of Trump on election night made me realize that not enough people understood what I think I understand. Anywho, the impeachment as well is also a opportunistic attempt to take advantage of the situation and to try to eliminate Trump, in my opinion, as a threat politically going forward. By impeaching him, if you successfully do so, it does no good for the American people. But it takes away, the money thing he doesn't care about, but it takes away his security service detail, which makes him more vulnerable to violence once he's out. It keeps him from running again, so he can't fundraise. He can't fundraise for that particular election. He can't try to re-enter office or start, being involved in the conversations over the next 4 years and run in 2024. it weakens him in many different aspects. And so they're pushing it right now based off of perceptions, pushing those actions as much as they can. Crises are the currency of career politicians. If we didn't have problems, we would be less dependent on them, we would hold them more accountable, and they would be in a weaker position. So it's worth remembering that crises are their opportunities and problems are their currency. That's how they sell us on keeping them in office, is because of these problems that they keep fighting and they keep fighting and they keep battling, but nothing ever actually gets done except for the people that keep their campaigns well funded. I hope you have a good day. I hope this information was useful to you. Peace.